Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, here kicking off our team discussions for the 2025 season, and we've got a special guest from the coaches panel. MJ, welcome, mate.
Swizz, my brother, it's so good to see you. So good to be talking about Supercoach. So many players to look at, so many teams to consider. And the Adelaide Crows, maybe it's my Crom bias coming out, but they feel Supercoach relevant for us this year at the mid-price range, at the top line, and even a couple of cash cows that we could consider too.
For sure. It's probably the thing that's got me excited about my boys, because it always seems to be the lowest you are on the ladder, or when you're down that lower part, you always seem to unearth a few great Supercoach players to follow. But a little bit better for the Adelaide Crows this season, because you guys actually have the potential to move up the ladder. And we'll have a look at that fixture. But there are some games, double up games in particular, against maybe a North Melbourne or West Coast that you might have not got if you had finished a little bit higher. That does give the Adelaide Crows the opportunity to, give their best chance to feature maybe come September.
Look, that's probably the dream. I think that's the peak of what they could sort of get to, is scraping into finals. And I use that term loosely, but in that bottom 1, 2, 3 spots of the top 8, I think is kind of their destiny. I don't see a world where they go worse than they did last year when you look at how underperformed they did based on expectations and what they've done in the trade and draft period. I do think they're heading up the ladder, but as you said, there wasn't much more up or down they could go to get back up. So, yeah, I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch, and a great Supercoach output for us this year.
And we are a bit blessed with them. Like the 9 other sides, they don't have that round 0 opening game. So their only bye is official bye for Supercoaches round 15, which is not a bad time for a bye either, because you can start some of their rookies and trade into somebody else once they've matured, if they've lasted that long. But also there is another bye round after there. So you can always get them in to, cover and not have to worry about the fact that they, if you're a player that you've brought in mid-season, that they're going to miss a bye, and then you can obviously ride them to the end of the season. So they do have the kickoff of the Saints, the Bombers, North, Suns, and Geelong. The Cats is the gather round match, but at least that is at home. Apart from that, it's not actually a bad start. Playing the Bombers at the G is kind of where you'd prefer to play them instead of Marvel. The Suns, who knows what they can dish up on any given day. But there's a real opportunity there for the Crows to kick off the season quite well. And they do have quite a few Adelaide Oval games in that early part of the season, not just that first 5 that we're looking at, but then they do play the Giants after the Cats, the Blues and the Power in the showdown. So not a lot of travelling early in the season, which, if we were to go Adelaide players in our Supercoach team, players generally do score better at home, and hopefully they can get a fast start for us.
I think from a Supercoach perspective, this is exactly the sort of fixture we want, whether we're looking at that top end of the premiums. There are some good breakout options, let alone the cash cows that I'm sure we'll get to. Really, we're going to know the Crows' trajectory by about round 8. If they're not 5-3, or at the very least a neutral 4-4, not only can they kiss finals goodbye, probably a Matthew Nicks sacking is going to happen somewhere by the buys, should that eventuate. So, yeah, you're right, Swizz. We're going to get really good line of sight based on a favourable early fixture, both in location and opponents, to see whether or not this team is going to rebound up the ladder or not.
Yeah, 100%. So I've gone the starting lineup, and I know we've probably got a few differences there, but Hinge, Murray, Keane, could have easily gone Butts over Keane, but just because they've brought him in. Izak Cumming, the new player from the Giants, Worrell, Mick Kalani, Peatling also from the Giants, Soligo, and Scholl. Lucky Scholl looked really good on the wing last season. Alex Neil-Bullen comes in with some experience from the Ds, Tex, Benny Keys, and then we've got Rochelle, Fogarty, and the Thilthorpe, who hopefully has a massive preseason for the Crows this year. Riley O, Matty Crouch I've got in there at the moment, but there's been definitely some discussions with that on the Adelaide forums. Dawson, the skipper, and then Curtin, Laird, Draper, and Rankine with Pedlar as my sub. What are your thoughts about that 23, mate?
Gee whiz, we're actually pretty close, mate, to be fair. So I think you're right. Like the Butts, Murray, keen, like pick two of the three. Unfortunately, it's for Butts and Murray, injury has not been favourable. So two of those three feel like that's going to be the key position players. Then the rest, I'm pretty happy with that defensive line. I think the greatest change between you and I really is just one player, and then there's a few positional, you go there, you slide up, you drift back, no, start on the bench. Is I think Wayne Miller Jr. comes into this Crows side when he's fit, and he becomes the creator and the playmaker off half back. We go back and watch his games. He has been Supercoach relevant for us at times in the past too, but how many moments there's gifts you can go and find on X of him just fending off 2, 3, 4, 5 players and getting out of these damaging moments. So his ability to create, his evasiveness, his speed, his power has really been missed by the Crows. And I think if they can get him back to anywhere near full fitness, he comes straight into this Crows best 23 for mine. And the one change that I have in contrast to yours is a Matty Crouch. You alluded to the fact that it's up for debate. I just think the Crows midfield structure and side just looks better without him there. Laird, sort of floating between the wing is not where he's going to be. The mid is not where he's going to be. To me, he's a halfback guy. We saw that experiment over the last month or so of the year, and it worked, and it's where he started his career. To me, you get him out of the mids, you get Crouch out of the mids, and all of a sudden, not only does it boost the Supercoach relevance for a couple of really important players for us, I just think the archetype of that midfield looks so much better. So that's really the only difference for me. I do want to talk about Luke Pedler a little bit later in the podcast with you, though, because I think you've nailed an absolute smoky that people have forgotten just what he did for not only the Crows, but for Supercoaches just 2 years ago.
We'll move on to the Supercoach targets because, yes, I think Pedler deserves to be talked about that. I've sort of tried to, and with some of these targets, it's not necessarily for our starting team, but players to even monitor throughout the season. Like Geelong will be a great example because they have such a great fixture on the run home, for example, where, I've listed a couple of their players who you might be targeting come mid-year. So some of these players at some point, I think, if we will be considering, depending on, even like Neil Bullen, depending on how the other forwards sort of project. And also, for those draft players out there, there are a few smokies that I know people do have their drafts coming up soon, or once Supercoach opens, I know people start planning around that. So, there are always some players that people aren't thinking about. So we do try to include that as well. But we'll kick off with Jordan Dawson. Probably wasn't his best year compared to the seasons that he had in 23 and 22, only with the 102 average. Probably had some of the down games because of his kicking efficiency coming out of that centre square, and which probably got hurt because of the lack of forward target. And I think in a Riley Thilthorpe, which I'm sure you'll speak a little bit more in a second, but did average 115, nearly 116 the year before, and then 109 in 2022. So underpriced for what he had delivered for us in previous years, mate.
So much went wrong for Jordan Dawson last year. While never really publicly confirmed by the Crows or Jordan himself, it was evident and clear that he was carrying some nagging little lower leg injuries. If you go back and watch some of that footage of the Crows mid-season, like there's some bandage, some tape one week, and then there's not. And then it's a little bit higher on the leg, and then it's a little bit lower. Even that game against the Hawks at the MCG, all round it was he's going to miss, he's going to miss, he's going to miss, he's going to be a laid out. And then he somehow finds a way to play through. So there was always this injury question mark sitting around Dawson. So that's one factor that impacts a player's performance. The other, as you mentioned, is just a poorer efficiency of how he used the ball. And that's partially linked to just the Crows forward 50 targets and a misfunctioning midfield. The rising tide of 2023, where they got their forward line working well with a strong season of Tex Walker and Izak Rankine on the field inside forward 50 a lot of the year. It should be of no surprise a player of such a score involvement, meters gained, high ball quality user like Dawson, when those things aren't functioning as well, that clips his averages down a little bit. And then the other piece to mention is what you've alluded to is the Crows forward structure was really lacking in 2024 with no Riley Thilthorpe. Tex was clearly hindered through injury. And so now it just sits on a third-year player in Rochelle, a Rankine who needed to come into the mid to add some dynamic because that wasn't working. And now it's all Fogarty and bust. And so he becomes the guy that fixes the issues for the Crows. We need another forward target. Put him through into the forward line. We need some better use on the outside. Let's put him to the wings. We need to stop the hemorrhaging and setting up the playmaking that's not working for us in defensive 50. Put Dawson back there. So because of his versatility to be able to play in every single spot on the ground, barring the ruck, and he probably could do that too, Suze, if I'm honest with you.
Well, Carlton do it with Patrick Cripps, so it's not out of the question.
It's not out of the question in 2025. They just moved him around a lot. And so his Supercoach scoring fell away. Like he went from a 70% centre bounce guy in 2023, which really only kicked in that Carlton gather round game in round 4 or 5 of 23. So to get 70%, it's actually closer to the 76, 77, 78. He dropped down to 59%. So I look at this Crows makeup and go, have they addressed these issues that caused his volatility of position? Well, Riley Thilthorpe's fit. That structures them up so much better. And Alex Neil-Bullen, who you mentioned, brings leadership, pressure, and something that they've greatly lost is that kind of ability to interconnect between the mid forwards with his addition to the team. And Izak Cumming is a great outside runner and a really penetrating ball user. And the health and fitness now of a Wayne Miller Jr. To me, I go, all the reasons he was volatile, he's now much more stable, and they've got arguably a clone of him in the 2023 draft in a Dan Curtin, who is now fit. He's on top of his body, who understands the demands of AFL. To me, I'll put it really straight. If Matt Crouch is out of the Crows side in round 1 and stays out of the Crows side, Jordan Dawson, he'll go 120 this year, and he'll rival Bontempelli as the number 1 midfielder. That is how confident I am Dawson can head back to that, not just that 115 average that we saw in 2023, but surpass it with an improved Crows side if Matt Crouch is out of the side.
I love that, because last year he came on and told me, get Tristan Cherry. You had him. I didn't take your advice. And we saw how that played out. Matt Crouch out round 1. Jordan Dawson, guys, and I love that so much. Yeah, that's why you're here, mate, to deliver that. We can loop these, or we can put these two guys together. The two
Sure.
GWS recruits, James Peatling, who's 352,000K for us, and Izak Cumming at 287. How do you see these guys fitting into the Adelaide lineup? And should we be looking at any of these for our starting teams?
If you're shopping in that 250 to 350K range in the midfield, both need to be factors. Let's start with Izak, and then we can jump over to James. Coming in at a price point of really a 53, off an average of a 66, he's undeniable value based on his past. Like you look at that 2022 and 2021 season at the Giants, he's a 92.9 and a 94.7 for us. So fantastic value. The things I want to wave as potential flags around Izak is, I think personally, he sits better on the Crows wing opposing to Lockie Scholl than he does across the halfback. Now, if he sits in halfback, I'll change my opinion on Izak a little bit. But if he's on the wing, which is where I believe he's going to sit, there's going to be moments and games where all wingmen experience where it's just dead quarters, dead halves, and that could hurt his scoring component. So he scored those 90s across halfback for GWS. If he gets that role at the Crows, okay, we've got awesome value, and now the game is afoot. The only thing I would say with Izak is players that have horrible injury history, which Izak does. He only played 4 home and away games last year, always soft tissue related with Izak, is you need to see a flawless preseason from them to give you the confidence to start them, because my narrative around injury history, guys, is start them, bank the points, minimize the risk of trading into the injury, so you only have to trade out. But he's already got that hamstring once this preseason. It's on the right side of the preseason to not completely rule him out, but I'll be blunt. If Izak has another injury setback between now and March, the risk profile you're adding into your team to pick him is getting really high. So he's relevant, but he's probably not the mid-price from the Crows I'm bullish on. For me, it's James Peatling's at 352,800. That 65 average is drastically impacted by 7 vest impacted games, and all green vest ones too. Let's take those vest affected games away. What is he doing for us? He's averaging a 92 in Supercoach. So there's almost 30 points per game of value, which is right at the levels we need this to hit, let alone if he gets the centre bounce role that I forecast he has. Because in the 8 games last year where he did attend 50% centre bounces or more, he goes at a Supercoach average of 98.3. And he sits this Crows game style beautifully. They are a high stoppage, high contested team. And where does James score in Supercoach? Clearance, tackles, pressure, 1%ers. Like, this is his game. A third of the AFL was chasing him in the trade period. You don't go to the Crows without a guarantee that the spot is yours to lose, because he came not just for more money, I'm sure, but for more AFL experience and opportunity in his preferred position, which is midfield. So to me, he's gone past Berry as the pressure mid. His explosive speed adds a new dynamic for the Crows. His ball use is better than people think. And he showed last year, round 20, he goes 133 with 11 tackles and 28 touches. Round 8 with 24 touches, a 116 in Supercoach. And that's with a disposal efficiency of 58. So if I'm shopping in the mid-price range for the Crows, Peatling's probably the guy, because he's got proven performance in the role, in-baked value due to the vest, need an opportunity for his skill set. And I just think all signs point to, if you're around that 350K mark, Peatling might just be the best option.
Yeah, I love that, mate. And as you did say, yeah, there's so many sub-effective scores. I think it's, as much as I don't want Adelaide to have that early buy, it's a team that I really wish they were playing around 0 to have a look at how they line up, because it's all dependent on what they do with Laird and Crouch. If it is Laird at halfback, you're right, Cumming goes to that wing position, and probably I feel like Scholl's the more attacking winger, and because Cumming has played defence, he plays that defensive winger. Kind of think Kel Mills when he's playing a role there, and how poor that he can score in those defensive wing roles, and that's where I'm like, if I see that, yeah, I don't want to bar of him. Where if they're thinking Laird's still in the midfield instead of Crouch, and then putting Cumming back at half back, then it's a completely different story. So yeah, it's either I would love to see it in a proper game and hope that Peatling's the one in that midfield, even if it's not first banana, with Dawson and Saligo. See him being that first one that either comes off the interchange or rotates from, say, the wing or the half forward line into the guts, because we do know players like Brisbane do it so well, say your McCluggages and even your Ashcrofts, so that even if they're not starting midfielders, they can still average 90 plus as that fourth player. Jason Horne-Francis, another great example, averages 99 as a fourth string midfielder. Second string, but fourth as the fourth main guy. So yeah, Peatling can become that guy. And yeah, because we had that proven last year, like the way he finished the season, 93, 133, 96, 100, and 97, and only really had that 40 in that mix. There's a 6-game period there to say, hey, this guy, when he's on the field, he scores.
Yeah, I look at the Crows midfield, and again, Matt Crouch is the greatest variable. If he's out of the side like I forecast him to be, the Crows midfield is clear and super coach relevant. Dawson, I've already made a call on. I think Saligo and Peatling are the second and third most centre-bouts attended mids. And then it's Rankine, who we'll probably talk about, Draper, and then if needed, you can throw elements of Alex Neil-Bullen, Rochelle, Keys if you're desperate, let alone heading back to the Wells in Laird. If an in-game injury, something goes pear-shaped, you can move it around. So to me, Crouch out is huge, but Peatling and Dawson, I'm pretty bullish on this year.
Yeah, I love it. And that last midfielder, as you said, brought him in the draft this year, 190K, very popular choice at the moment, Sid Draper. What can you tell him else about this really exciting recruit? Because we do know there was a lot of discussion about, did Carlton take him, do other teams move up? So I think the Crows have a good one here.
Yeah, I think so. In December, over on our YouTube channel and wherever you get the Coaches Panel audio podcasts, you can check it out as well. I did a chat with AFL draft guru Dylan Alexander. His analysis of this draft crop has been second to probably only Cal Toomey, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of understanding and ability to speak about this draft crop. He spoke so highly about Sid Draper as just that perfect player, not only for Carlton, but also for Adelaide, where he's got speed, he's got power, his ability to accumulate and find the ball, his ability to show himself against men, not just in the under 18 system. He's got everything the Crows are missing in that midfield mix. Think Caleb Sarong clone for a moment. And if you look at how Caleb's Supercoach started his scoring, he did all right from the start, that is for sure. But a 108 average in the Sandful last year, going at 22 disposals by average, almost 5 clearances a game, over 6 tackles. This is a beautiful pickup for the Crows. The only slight hesitation you should have is he's just being eased through training at the moment with a little bit of a back niggle, but it's not enough of a reason to put him in the rehab group. So they're just being conservative with his loads, which is not uncommon for first-year players. So that's just something to sit in the mix of that. I've already talked about how I think he sits in this Crows midfield dynamic. So to me, I understand why not only do so many people own Sid Draper, but why they're confident enough to put him on the field. So, yeah, I think Sid's going to be a really great pick for the Crows and going to be a pretty handy Supercoach scorer for us.
And the thing that we'll obviously always love about the South Australian or the Western Australian boys is that they do play senior footy. The Sandford was a very good competition, and the 6 games he did there, as you said, the 6 tackles, which shows even though he's a smaller guy, is still happy to put his body on the line and pressure acts, which are always gold for Supercoach. And his disposal efficiency, 66%, is not bad for somebody who's playing midfield in as a youngster stepping in there. So, stepped up to the rigors of the bigger bodies and proved that he can handle it at such a young age.
Yeah, I think the only thing around our Supercoach rookies this year, there's so much heightened excitement about the quality of this crop and class, as there absolutely should be. It does appear to be right back to that super draft that we had a handful of years ago, the Walsh, the Butters, the Rosie, Rankine, that kind of territory of draft. I think it's in that similar vein. But we've been spoilt for choice in Supercoach over the last couple of years, haven't we, with these high-end rookies just delivering near knockout premium numbers. Ashcroft, Sheasel, Dacos, McKercher. I think the only thing I would say about Draper is while he can play in multiple positions, midfield's where he's at his best, and the Supercoach players from draft class into their first few months of AFL that have scored the best for us have been distribution roles off halfback, which is what McKercher, Dacos, Sheasel did early days. I don't see that for Draper. Ashcroft is a unicorn. Reed was a bit of a unicorn in terms of being pure mid and giving us great scores. Draper's not a unicorn in that regard. So just temper expectations on him, because I don't think he's got that favorable role that makes it easier for players to set up their scoring in Supercoach with that less midfield heavy role.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of warning there, because sometimes because of how well, in particular, the North Melbourne players, Dacos, who's a generational talent, they come in and then averaging 90 and 100. We now think all these rookies are going to do that. Where usually we're pretty happy if we got between sort of that, and they end up making a good 100, 150K for us. Anything above that was just a bonus. So, I think temper expectations. But if he gets up to sort of 340, 350, he has done his job. And that's where the baseline I think we should be expecting it. And, anything above that, it's just, we just take.
Yep, totally agree.
All right, the forwards here, in particular, the one that's exciting everyone's Izak Rankine. I think a few people of more looking at reasons not to pick Jason Horne-Francis. We know Rankine, when he gets that opportunity in the midfield, he scores really spike. It's always hard with like the sort of if you're playing that small forward role, but he does, impact the scoreboard. And if Adelaide are going to improve, there are going to be more opportunities not to just kick goals, but get those goals assists. And we're always looking for that from a Supercoach perspective. What else are your thoughts there on Rankine, mate?
Yeah, I think if you don't start him, you absolutely have him as an upgrade target. There's a world where you feel more confident to start him because over the past couple of years, he's had a hamstring injury per year at the club. And generally, I'm a believer of you start your injured guys. If you're going to do that, balance the risk profile. Don't go too heavy across too many spots in your side. Bank the games, bank the scores, and away you go. The beautiful thing about Rankine is he doesn't have to have that heavy centre bounce split to really hit these upper echelons of what it means to be a top tier Supercoach forward for us. Like between round 7 to 9 last year, he averaged 116. I know it's only a 3-game sample size, but in those games, he never attended more than 33% of centre bounces. Other games, you've got him going 50 plus and he's delivering super high scores. Other games, he's down at single digits centre bounces for the game. There wasn't a game last year he didn't attend a centre bounce. So it's clear the Crows want him in that spot. And I think the way I can best explain the way the Crows want him to play is how Richmond beautifully used Shai Bolton in their premiership era, which was we want him in at the stoppage and at centre bounce because his ability to win clearance, and if he doesn't win it, to get him as the second touch player after our player wins the clearance, and his just acceleration, his speed, his X factor to get that ball inside forward 50. And then we try to lock it in if our tall doesn't take the mark. I think the Crows love that. But then what Rankine does so well, and again, using Premiership Bolton as the illustration, is it wasn't just his ability to win clearance or set up an inside 50, is the hope was that they could get him to move then quickly into forward 50 and create a mismatch in the handover between the opposition defender and the opposition midfielder, and just hope that you can get a half a meter of space, that their communication isn't super clear, that somewhere in a contest, he just finds a way to drift away. And let's be honest, this is not crumb eyes. This is just genuine. If Izak Rankine is anywhere near forward 50 and he has half a meter of space, every opponent, every opposition fan, there is nerves welling up because there is not many players in the competition that can punish you with a half meter of space inside forward 50. So I think that's what the Crows are looking for. I think he's got the ceiling of a 105 average about him because if, again, the Crows can improve on last year, let alone this mid-forward split that he's got, I can see that triple-figure average coming. And they've got that good start too that you mentioned. Saints at home, Bombers away, North at home. Like that's a really nice, handy fixture of players. I don't see a really good matchup to lock down on him in any of those first 3 games, let alone Suns, Cats, Giants that to come. So, yeah, if you're looking for an F1 that doesn't have a hyphen in their surname, Rankine's probably the only other guy at F1 I'd feel confident to start.
And I'll throw this little bit of a nugget in because of this. Obviously, there is some very popular mid-price forwards this year. But if people are trying to maybe antipod them, or we do get a couple of injuries and things obviously happen pre-season, the flex position now opens up the ability to move out a lower score, which Rankine has the ability to if he was to play more forward. But it's that kind of, we still get the high risk, high reward kind of players where a lot of other people are looking at Shai Bolton coming in. Their draws together actually work quite well from a Supercoach perspective, because I know Shai, the one thing a lot of people aren't liking, the fact that he does start with Geelong and then Sydney. So St Kilda and Essendon at North Melbourne is not a bad start there for Rankine. The Geelong game, which was probably going to be one of Rankine's hardest challenges just because of how good of a side they are. That's the week Shai Bolton does play Richmond. And it does sort of go on that sort of flow where there's some games there where, Adelaide, they're going to be tough ones, maybe the Giants away, even the Pies, if they are improving, where again, like Freo are do have a couple of more easier games. So you can potentially have one sitting in your flex position in. If they both score well, great. Somebody else's score is dropping out. But if that was the week that they get the heavy lockdown and they get targeted, or they don't get the centre bounce attendance that we would love for Rankine, the hope would be, well, the other one in, say, Shea Bolton would be scoring well, because Freo do have a bit of an easier match, and it sort of minimises the risk that we have of playing both these players. So it is something to consider, and I don't think because there are other popular places that their percentages might be a lot lower. And if you're looking kind of for a pod and a fast start with the fixtures that we've talked about, you could definitely look at going both these players.
Yeah, it's a good shout. And it would be a unique combination too. So
really
manage that risk profile on your side. If you're doing a 1-2 punch of these guys, well, you're probably not venturing into other riskier selections, either with risky on roll or high risk profile of injury. We all need to have a risk profile in our starting squad, because that's where the reward is going to come. If you're just playing a straight bat, nothing too aggressive, nothing too adventurous, you'll start fine, but you'll be in the pack. At some point, you need to find a way to get ahead of the pack and be a week or 2 weeks ahead of the Supercoach chasing pack. And so if you're doing this 1-2 punch, which I really love that, Swizz, as an idea, okay, well, all of a sudden, some riskier picks, either through injury or uncertainty of role, need to fall out of your starting squad of 31, because this might be where you're loading your risk profile.
And at least there, the risk with Bolton is not injury, but for Rankine, we do know there is some injury. But you, as you said, you would rather start players like that. Nothing worse than trading in a guy who's might have had soft tissue injuries in the past, and then you get 2 weeks out of them, and bang, there it goes again. So that's you. I'm 100% with that advice with you. If I'm going to have Rankine, I'm going to start him, then rather try to work out and also work out the best time to bring them in, because we know they go through periods where they have a 2, 3, 4 week run where they just go off the charts. They get their confidence up. The coach is happy with what they're seeing. So why they've got that momentum going, I'm going to get them in the right positions. I'm going to give them every opportunity there. And trying to predict that sometimes is impossible. Like, we talk about that Geelong game will probably be one of the harder games in that first sort of 8-9 weeks for Adelaide. But in saying that, who knows if Geelong get injuries that week, or the Crows are just up and about. We've seen this plenty of times where a team that you don't expect to beat, you come out and absolutely dominate. So footy can be funny like that. And sometimes it's just easy to go, I really like this guy for reasons A, B, and C. I'm going to not overthink this. I'm just going to pick him.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, let's go back 12 months ago. People that didn't start Elliot Yeo because of that injury history. Now, Rankine doesn't have the in-baked value that Yeo did 12 months ago, granted. But if you didn't start him and he's on the bubble at round 2, how hard did you find it to trade into that? Because the reason you faded was the injury history. Now you're using a trade to bring him in, and one, maybe even 2, to have to get him out. And so if injury is the only reason you're fading Rankine in your starting squad, my advice to anyone like that is, well, he's out for you and out for the year, no matter how good he is. His scoring pedigree is not the concern. If injury is the defining only reason you do not start him, not squad balance, not I like the fixture of others, not I'm looking for more value, you can trade into him then, and the injury risk is fine to absorb. But if you go, I do not want Rankine, and the only reason is bad injury history, well, not only do you not start, to me, the advice is you're done with him for the year. And as we saw with Yeo last year, if we've seen with Whitfield previous years, and these other quote-unquote injury-prone players, there is a risk, but the reward is top of their line scoring.
100%. Before we finish off, I think we do need to talk about Daniel Curtin and your boy Lukey Pedlar. So mate, go. The floor is yours with these two. Especially in Curtin's place, beautifully priced rookie for us.
Yeah, like both of these guys in and around that $150,000 market. Like, this is up with first year top 10 pick selections that we're looking for. So we're looking at it like this is cheaper than Draper, cheaper than Lawler, cheaper than O'Sullivan, in and around that price point of an Izak Kako and a Jared Berry, who we're considering as forward rookies on our side. there's this misnomer about the Crows and that they don't play their first round picks in their preferred position. And that's a little bit of confirmation bias because Dan Curtin, while a utility by trade, just didn't get into the side last year very often. And when he did, it was vest. And when he did play, it was a little bit halfback, a little bit wing, a little bit key position defender, a little bit third tall forward. Again, he's just so good and versatile in so many spots. My response to that is, well, what about Max Michelini a few years ago? Always been that lockdown medium defender. He played there from his first year, and he was a first year and a first round pick. Josh Rochelle, he's always been that creative hybrid forward. He did that in his first year too. So yeah, Curtin didn't quite work last year, but to say that it's a line through how the Crows treat first rounders, it's not quite fair. I think he's just got over the little niggles in his body. He's got confidence in himself. He's training through the midfield, not because I see him playing there, but again, that's how you build his athleticism. I see him as playing off that wing and through that forward line and playing some of that elements that Dawson did last year to help structure up the Crows' ball movement a little bit. I really like him as a player. I think he's inside that best 23. And depending on the volume of rooks that we have with certainty of role, I think he's one we should consider. The one that you've got as the sub in your best 23, and for me, I'm pretty keen to look at is Luke Pedlar too. We've just forget how important a player can be and that they can score in Supercoach when we don't really see them for a year, or in Luke's case, they have a shoulder injury that rules him out. And he does have a bad injury history, but he's priced where the risk can be absorbed. In 2023, his average of 55 isn't great, but within that are 6 scores of 70 plus, including an 83, which he had in that first round of the year. If he starts 2025 with anything like how he goes in 2023, if he played Supercoach 2 years ago, he was one of the most important rookies, money makers we had in the forward line that year. So to me, again, I think his power, his score involvements, his ability to kick that booming left foot, like he's got 55, 60 meter kick penetrating with accuracy about him. I really think he's the forgotten factor in the Crows. And I'm with you. I think he does sit inside the best 23. Little bit of a sub risk, absolutely, to flag, but with best 18, with 3 of the first 4 weeks, the flex coming in, meaning a poor score drops away. These are the sort of players that you can take a little bit of a risk that have got, like all rookies and sub 200K guys, not really any confidence that they're not going to get vested every single week. Pedlar needs to be a name that sits in there as well.
No, 100%. And I know we haven't touched on him for a lot there with Alex Neil-Bullen, but just one there, guys, for your drafts. Everyone's going to be targeting early your Luke Parkers, Caleb Daniels, like if you can get him, great. But even Jack McRae, for example, he's a guy that has consistently scored sort of 80s. He's great pressure in that forward line. No one's going to be focusing on him outside of your diehard Melbourne and Adelaide supporters. So one that you can pick up really late in your drafts, maybe is your F4, F5, depending on how deep your competition goes. And you're not going to be paying the world for him, and he's going to actually outscore a lot of the players that in that same range. So one for especially those who played that particular game. But yeah, 100% on the Curtin and Pedlar. If Pedlar doesn't look like starting sub and he's in that best 22, or the Crows do get a couple of injuries, yeah, he's definitely one to jump on, because it's only going to take 3 or 4 weeks of playing game time where it's not sub affected, and he's going to put some make some money for us.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, mate, before we go, how do the lovely folk out there find you?
You can get in touch with the coaches panel, so me and a bunch of other just Supercoach and the other format loving players. You can find us across social media. Just search for the coaches panel. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X. Wherever you get your audio podcasts, just search for the coaches panel. And we're also got the episodes on video and audio that you can check out on YouTube. We are currently in the midst of dropping a player per day in our 50 most relevant. It's a subjective list that I've created, basically stating who I think from a fantasy footy community perspective are the most important and relevant players to have a conversation about. New episode dropping every day, speaking with members of the panel and then great content creators across all of your fantasy footy landscape. Swizz is locked in. for a player in a few weeks' time that I'm keen to talk about. So we'd love, if you've never done a preseason with the coaches panel, jump on the 50 most relevant. It's a series that we love doing, and hopefully you'll love too.
I know I've got to always promote my show, but it is my favorite show outside of our own. It's one that I always tune in at the start of every year for the top 50. So if you haven't already, guys, if you're a fan of us here in Insiders and you haven't jumped over the coaches panel, like, subscribe, and follow them, because the top 50 is one of the best shows that we do have in the Supercoach and AFL Fantasy Dream Team community. So thank you so much for joining us, MJ. I always appreciate your insights, and tune in for our next team discussion soon. Thanks, guys.